Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Ghoran, and welcome back to another Pathfinder Hero Frame. We'll take a look at the different ancestries within Pathfinder 2nd Edition and see what backgrounds and classes best fit those ancestries. And today we are looking at the Ghoran, a race of intelligent plant folk. One of three, actually. Well, I guess technically Konrasu aren't plants specifically. They're cosmic forces with plant bodies to protect their souls. But anyway, these are the taller plant people, taller than the common ancestry, the Leshy. But, how do these guys differ from the Leshy? Well, we'll be talking about the Leshy at another time. So we're going to go ahead and talk about how the Ghoran act and were created. For their origins, we can actually trace their origins back to a war between two wizards. Geb, a necromancer, and Nyx, an archmage. These two wizards have been warring for years, and at the peak of this war, Nyx needed some food for his soldiers. And it's kind of hard to be growing any food in a magic-scarred plane like the Impossible Lands. So, Nyx hired a renegade druid by the name of Ghoran and asked him to create a plant that would survive in any environment, including the magic-scarred Impossible Lands. And Ghoran obliged. Unfortunately, his plan worked a little too well. Whether intentionally or not, the plant that Ghoran created gained sentience and began to walk around. Now, Nyx's forces would still eat the first Ghoran because, well, they needed food. So over time, these plants not only gained the ability to communicate, but also gained a more humanoid form. This eventually worked in the Ghoran's favor, and Nyx's army stopped wanting to eat them. They even gained citizenship in Nyx's city and surrounding territory. So there you have it. The Ghorans were created when a druid was tasked with creating a source of food for an archwizard's army. But they did such a great job that it gained sentience. Whether the Ghorans eventually helped Nyx in the war is unclear. But honestly, I don't see why they wouldn't at least be okay with it. Especially when the enemy wizard is a necromancer looking to kill all life. But, the Ghorans aren't exactly okay with non-plant creatures. They even call the more flesh-covered species animals. And they do not like the other ancestries. having a bit of xenophobia. And honestly, I don't really blame the Ghoran. I mean, they were considered a food source for the longest time. And, still kind of are. Apparently, the Ghoran's plant-like bodies are very sweet and possibly even nutritious, and are highly sought after food sources for other types of ancestries. So they still have that problem going for them, and one of the reasons why they tend to stay away from other civilizations. Now, Ghorans will sometimes go out adventuring. It is said that over the generations, Ghorans have become imbued with a wanderlust, which is why they are a playable ancestry within Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It is assumed that your character, as a Ghoran, is one of these individuals who has wanderlust in their seed pod heart. That's right. The Ghoran's main mechanic is that their soul is tied to a seed that develops in their body. If their main body is ever killed, you could just plant this seed and the Ghoran will grow a brand new body, reincarnating as a brand new Ghoran. So keep that in mind when making your character. You might want to have something tying back to this reincarnation. But speaking of, if a Ghoran is killed before this seed is able to be produced inside of them, there's no reincarnation, and this happens to be a big problem with this ancestry, as a lot of these Ghorans have actually died in this manner, or perhaps even the seed itself was destroyed. So, technically speaking, the Ghoran are an endangered species, as Agorus took the secret to creating new Ghorans to his grave. Delightful. I guess that could be an adventure to go on, as to find the secret to creating new Ghorans. Repopulate the planets with Ghorans? Who knows? Now, there is another oddity in the Ghorans that I want to point out, and that is the fact that Ghorans automatically gain access to the Sylvan language, the language of Fae. I really tried looking over the Ghoran's lore, both the 2nd edition and 1st edition lore, but nothing mentioned Fae. This could be a language that was learned from their creator, Gorus, but we don't have any information on Gorus besides the fact that he is the creator of the Ghoran, and is a renegade druid who had been exiled from the territory of Nex, and then was hired by Nex to create this food source that ended up turning into sentient life. So yeah, we'll probably get more into the Fae once we cover more ancestries like the gnome and the fairy, as well as probably the goblin. But when creating a character with the Ghoran ancestry, you might want to consider some of the Fae-themed feats. Just something to note. I will go more into detail a little bit later with that. But I just wanted to point this little oddity out, just so I don't confuse you with some of the choices that I made for character options. Are we good? Great. Let's go ahead and actually get into the meat of this video. Ghorans have four heritages: the ancient ash, the enchanting lily, the strong oak, and the thorned rose. Which one of these is meant to be a food source? I know supposedly that roses are edible, but, none of these are really food items, especially considering Goras had created an edible flower. Maybe the enchanting lily, but those guys are more into, well, enchantment magic. I don't know. It's another weird oddity. Probably something to go over at a later date. Maybe an expansion on the lore. But anyway, let's talk about the backgrounds. It is recommended that you take on the acolyte, the artisan, the artist, the farmhand, the fortune teller, herbalist, hermit, and the scholar. Some other backgrounds that I personally recommend would be the anti-tech activist, the cook, curandero, dendrologist, elementally infused wood, fey bound, fey friend, the green faith pilgrim, magical misfit, mana waste refugee, Merabite prodigy, plant whisperer, reborn soul to go off of that theme of the seed pod that contains their soul, root worker, scout, secular metic, sun dancer, tree friend, wanderlust, waste walker, wild wood local, wild born, and wood ward. For classes, it is recommended that you go with the alchemist, druid, fighter, investigator, ranger, sorcerer, and wizard. Now that we've gone over a baseline for your character, why don't we go ahead and take a deeper look into the subclasses to see which ones might work for a Ghoran. Starting things off with the alchemist, the research fields that pop out to me the most are the chirurgeon and toxicologist. What toxicologists? Well, there are a bunch of different poisons, but there are also a lot of healing herbs for the chirurgeon to be based around, such as rosemary or curry powder, even cayenne. Speaking of, peppers would be good as a toxin as well, along with a lot of poisonous plants, like poison ivy, the hemlock, castorberry, which is a berry, by the way, an edible plant item. There's also rosemary and oleander. Even the manchineel tree? I don't remember what that thing does. But anyway, there are a lot of different poisonous plants out there that you could base your Ghoran off of. Moving on to the animist. For your apparitions, we have the custodian of gardens and groves, a monarch of the Fae courts, stalker in darkened boughs, and witness to ancient battles. These guys were created during the War of Nex and Geb, so that makes perfect sense. Next is the Barbarian. For your instincts, the Blood Rager. Again, they were created in a battlefield-like area, the Impossible Lands. So there's probably some blood on the ground they probably absorbed. Maybe the blood of some powerful spellcasters? Who knows? Then you have the Elemental. I would recommend just about any single element. You got your lily pads, your spruce trees, Also, there are some special berries that will still grow in winter. There are all your root vegetables and plants that are mostly used for their roots, so earth. The only one I don't recommend is metal. Then, of course, you have giant. There are a lot of very large trees, so an instinct of the giant would make perfect sense. Next is the Bard. Muses of the Enigma and the Polymath are the probably going to be the most common that you'll see. There's a very small chance that you will have a zoophile, but the Enigma and Polymath are probably going to be your more common bards, if you create a bard at all. Moving on to the Cleric. Of course, you're a Cloistered Scholar Cleric, but you could have a War Priest as well. But as for deities, Ghoran and the Eldest are the main recommendations if you are leaning more towards a deity. There is also an entity known simply as the Green Faith, which most Ghorans follow. Not just a deity, but more of an idea, sort of like Mother Nature itself. I don't know much about the Green Faith, so you would probably have to look that up yourself. There wasn't much info to go off of. There wasn't really even any benefits for having the Green Faith as a quote-unquote deity for your cleric. It seems to be more focused around some of the ancestry feats or even some class feats that you are able to choose. Moving on to the Druid. For your Druidic orders, there is Flame, Leaf, Untamed, and Wave. Moving on to the Investigator. For methodologies, I would recommend Alchemical Sciences and Empiricism. For Magus, the only hybrid study that I saw would be the Twisting Tree. Again, going off of that plant theme that they are known for. Moving on to the Oracle. The mysteries of the ancestors, flames, and life would make the most sense for a Ghoran. Moving on to the Sorcerer. The ones that are recommended by Paizo themselves are the Elemental. Again, I would recommend doing any of the Elemental bloodlines except for Metal, and the Imperial. I also put in the Nymph as a recommended, as well as Fae, because of all the Fae-themed ancestry feats that you can pick. You can indeed create a Dryad character using the Ghoran as a base, using the Sorcerer bloodline of the Fae and the Nymph, as well as taking some of these Fae ancestry feats using the Dryad as your base. And just so we are clear, there are indeed male Dryads. These male Dryads are called Drus. Moving on to the Swashbuckler. The styles of the Battle Dancer and the Fencer are probably going to be your most common. Going on to the Witch, the patron themes of Ripple in the Deep, Silence in Snow, Whisper of Wings, and Wilding Steward are probably going to be your best bet. Though I would probably recommend leaning more towards Wilding Steward more than Whisper of Wings, since Whisper of Wings is more for your feathered patrons, more than it is just the air element itself. Though it would be fitting for a dandelion-like Ghoran, so that's the reason why I picked it. And then finally, we have the Wizard. For your arcane schools, I would recommend the Red Mantis, the Civic Wizardry, and the Protean Form. Protean Form should be obvious. The Ghoran did manipulate their bodies over time to be more humanoid in shape. So having a Wizard School of the Protean Form, a Wizard School dedicated to manipulating your physical form, would make sense. But why the Red Mantis? They are assassins. Well, mostly I picked this for the funny play off of the Orchid Mantis, an insect that disguises itself as a flower. So, you could reverse this and have a plant being who works with the Red Mantis as an assassin. Furthermore, another type of plant that would be beneficial to an assassin organization is, of course, the deadly nightshade. So, bit of a double play for the Ghoran. The Orchid Mantis and deadly nightshade. And that is it for today's video. What do you think of the Ghoran? Honestly, this is a very interesting ancestry, and I would not mind playing it at least once. I can see some interesting character designs coming out of this one ancestry. What type of character will you make? Let me know in the comment section below. And until next time, this has been Drahan, and I am offline.